What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, on this episode of Single Serve, we are going to be talking about the dark side of consistency. And that probably sounds a little bit confusing or a little bit weird to some people, because you would think like, you know, they always talk about how consistency leads to positive habits and consistency leads to success. And yes, all that is true. Consistency is not a bad thing. But the dark side of consistency is understanding that it's not just about what you do, but also about what you have to give up, and the things that you can't do, and the things that you need to leave behind you in order to grow in that stage of consistency and when you're pursuing something truly meaningful. I call it the dark side because a lot of people don't really think about what it really takes to win, or what it takes to really make it to that end goal. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about myself, and then I can relate it to other things in the world and other things that you've probably seen firsthand. And, you know, there was a point in time where I used to be heavy. I was fat, overweight, out of shape, you know, didn't really want to pursue fitness in the way that I do now, obviously, which is, you know, that kind of makes sense when you really think about it. There was a lot of changes that I wasn't necessarily looking to make, and the example there would be like your diet, right? A lot of people, when they start exercising, when they start working out, a lot of people think like, oh, you know, I'll just exercise and then I won't really have to change my diet much, or vice versa. And you kind of realize that those things go hand in hand. So at the time when, you know, I was going through my transformation and my transition, it was exercising, and, you know, I felt better, but I wasn't looking better. And a big part of, you know, when you start working out and you want to start being consistent is you don't just want to feel better, you don't want to feel stronger, you also want to look the part. You know, a lot of people get caught up in the aesthetics of it, and you kind of start to realize that, you know, you have to change the way you eat in order to make that happen. And, you know, on the other side, it's, you could be dieting, you could be losing weight, but you're not necessarily like getting more muscular, like tightening up. You don't necessarily feel stronger, and you kind of start to realize like, oh shit, like I have to actually do a little bit more than I expected. You know, and the dark side of that comes with the things that you have to give up, and giving things up is not always easy. You know, it's understanding that, okay, pasta might be my favorite food, but are you willing to give up pasta for the next, you know, 6 months? Or are you only willing to eat it once, you know, every couple weeks? You know, it can turn you into a different type of person, and it can kind of put you mentally in a funk and in a darker place, because you're not really used to telling yourself no. That's one of the hardest things in life, is telling yourself no, going against the grain, you know, giving yourself a chance to debate and fight with yourself and making a final decision. Normally, people are used to just, you know, oh, I'm going to get up early. They try to get up early. They're like, nah, actually, I don't want to. And it develops like a complacency, like settling type of mindset. And that's kind of the norm for us. And when you decide to be consistent at something, it becomes very dark, because that's a very mild example of giving up food. But what if you want to be the best at whatever it is you want to do? Okay, let's think about professional athletes. You want to be the best basketball player in the world. You're going to have to give up time with your family. Not just like the simple things like sleep and, you know, whatever. People don't think about the fact that like you're going to have to give up time away from your family. That's a hard thing to do. You're going to have to give up hanging out with friends on the weekends. You're going to have to give up, maybe you like skiing or snowboarding. You can't do that anymore because there's too much of a risk factor of getting hurt. And the one thing about consistency is you have to be willing to give up things as much as you're willing to do things. And that's normally the hard part. It's being able to stop doing the things that you enjoy because of the greater goal. And that's something that a lot of people don't really talk about. It's the amount of effort that it takes mentally to be consistent versus physical is two completely different things. Like, yes, showing up is half the battle. And I know that people say that, but the thing is, why is that the only half that people ever really talk about or focus on? You have to show up. That's part of it. But what did it take in order for you to show up? You know, you're trying to get in shape. You have to sacrifice time with your girlfriend. Or if you're single, you got to sacrifice time with your, you know, with going on dates. You're going to have to learn how to be alone. You're going to have to learn that you can't go out to dinner with all these girls because you got to stay locked in. And it can put you in a place where you almost start to resent the thing that you're doing. And that's another reason why most people quit. It's not necessarily because of the showing up part. Most people quit because of the things that they don't want to give away. Nobody wants to have to sacrifice having fun for the greater good. Nobody wants to sacrifice missing time with people and friends and family and activities that they love to accomplish the thing that they want. But let me give you some perspective, okay? If you live to be 80 and you sacrifice 1 year, you give 1 year everything that you have to just make a little bit of progress, that is 1/80th of your life. I don't even know what that boils down to in a decimal, but it's probably less than 0.1. It definitely is less than 0.1. So when you start to think about it in that scale, you start to realize that it's not so bad, right? So some tools and things that you need to use is you need to be able to rationalize it. You need to be able to justify it. You need to be able to learn how to manage that brain space and understand that you're only giving something up for so long. And most of the time it's something that you realize you didn't even need. But it becomes hard, and it can be really hard because it can completely change who you are and what you value as a person. You might start to value being alone more. You might start to value less time with family. You might start to value that selfish aspect. You might start to, you know, say you're in a marriage and you're like, wow, like I really love how much time I can pour into myself. And that might put a strain on your marriage. It's the darkness that comes with the light that people don't want to tap into. But understanding it and communicating with yourself and with the people around you can be the difference between you having that support and you having to do these things alone. You know, if you have the ability to have support, you need to communicate with your partner or with your family or your friends. You have to be able to tell yourself, like, listen, this is what we're going to do and it's okay. Because when you start to let your brain kind of take over and you don't really tap into these things and you don't really talk to yourself and help yourself understand the greater good. Because one thing that people don't understand, I understand I sound crazy by saying talking to yourself, but like you have a conscious and a subconscious, right? If your main goal is always in your subconscious, the version of you right now is not going to understand. If you know, like, I have to do this because of X, Y, and Z, that needs to stay at the front of your brain and at the back of your brain at all times so that you are fully aligned. Because I'll tell you right now, also from experience, there's times where I'm like, dude, why do I have to get up at 6 a.m. just to go run? Why do I have to be tired? Nobody else has to be tired. Why do I have to, stop? Why do I have to stop, going and playing sports when other people get to go and play sports? Like, why does it have to be me? But you have to understand that everybody's process is different, and it depends on where you want to be in life. If you want to be good or great at something, this is the sacrifice that comes with it. Even if you just want to be the best version of yourself, you have to understand that self-work is going to outweigh and matter a lot more long-term than the little things that you like to do. I'm not saying you have to give up everything completely, but, say you really like to go fishing, but fishing is really time-consuming. There's a version of you that does it every day, and there's a version of you that does it once a week. And if your goal is not to be a fisherman, then you kind of need to understand that you maybe can't do it every day. Like if you do want to be the best fisherman, then you have to go out there and you gotta fish as much as you can. But then you gotta understand all the other things that's gonna take away from it. You might have to eat less. You might have to, sacrifice a little bit of your health. There's a lot of things that come with the good in being consistent that really make things hard. That's what life is. Life is fully just balance. Life is equilibrium. Life is, I understand that, if I want good things to happen, bad things will happen too. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. It's not always going to be smooth sailing. There are times where it's going to be. And I think when you come to terms with yourself and you start to understand, the differences, and you start to understand that you can, make things happen if you just are willing to go the extra mile and give up those things, and you start to understand that life can really improve if you wanted to. You just have to be willing to sacrifice certain things that you like. When you realize that, it's going to make all the difference. And that's when you can really tap into that mentality and just become an absolute dog, become an absolute, animal, and just stay locked in, is understanding that I need to focus on this in order to win. So I hope this makes sense. I hope this was helpful. Thank you guys for tuning into Single Serve. If you guys want to, drop a comment as far as like what you guys do in order to stay locked in and stay tapped in. Some of the things that you've had to sacrifice in your time, to improve your life. Don't be afraid to share that and be vulnerable in the comments. Don't be afraid to help somebody else. But everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. I love you guys. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you like the content, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.